Okay.
Give me a smile.
Ready? Oh. And this is Nick Phillips.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay. Well, again, Nick, my name is John Paris. We've met before. For those watching at home, this is Nick Phillips. He is the Republican candidate for Nevada Assembly District 41. Normally is now the time that I would introduce the Asian American group to you, but you've obviously already heard my spiel.
Yeah.
So why don't we just get right into it. First question is the same one we asked you last time, and it'll be you'll be hearing it again. Why have you decided to run for this particular race at this particular time?
Sure. So for me, I'm a parent and I'm a small business owner here in the state of Nevada. I've employed a lot of folks for more than the last decade. And, I look around and I see what's going on, and I think that there's a lot of work that we can do on our schools and jobs in general in the state of Nevada. And I think I bring a unique perspective to that. I've been doing business consulting. I've owned several companies, and I've seen lots of different industries for a long time. And I don't see a lot of our legislators that have employed folks and really seen a big breadth of the state, breadth of the types of industries that we have. So I think I bring a really unique perspective to the legislature. Why at this time? I'm running at this time because my current Assemblywoman, Vicky Dooling, decided not to run, and so it's an open seat. It's important for us to hold this seat as Republicans, to hold the majority. There's almost no path to being in the majority without winning Assembly District 41. I'm a hard worker. I'm a guy who can get out there and really, campaign hard and get through this. It is a slightly Democrat-leaning district, and I think that that's just great for me. I'm able to get along with everybody, and some of the legislation that I was able to help get passed this last session in 2015 was voted on unanimously, and it was some potentially very controversial language that, again, it was passed unanimously, and that was just from a lot of hard work and working with everybody. And after all, at the end of the day, that's what it's really about, is governing and making sure that we can do what's best for the state, and I think I'm the best fit for that.
This has been a rather unique election cycle.
Sure.
More on a national stage than obviously for local politics, but both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump really found a niche in representing people that felt themselves either being unrepresented or underrepresented. What ideas do you have to try and keep those individuals who view themselves as being somewhat disenfranchised? How would you keep those individuals more vested in the political process and keep them coming out to vote and participating in electing individuals such as yourself?
It's all about communication, right? So for me, I go out and I talk to folks at the door. I've knocked on thousands of doors personally. I've talked to thousands of voters. As much as you can do in person, that's really the best way, because people can look you in the eye and have a conversation with you and really educate folks about what is it that the state legislature does and what's going on. And talking to people at the door, when I ask them what's the most important thing to them, lots of times it's the national issues, right? They think that's all that politics is what's going on nationally. But the truth is whether we have a Trump presidency or a Clinton presidency, neither of them are going to come into the state of Nevada and help fix our jobs and help fix our education system and our medical system and all the things that are going on locally. That's all left to the local politics that happen right here. So the first thing is really educating folks and explaining to them what is it that they have to gain or lose by participating or not. And as much as possible at the door, in person is the best. But I'm a tech guy, right? So for me, reaching out to folks in whatever manner they're willing to communicate, whether it's Facebook or email or Twitter or videos, and coming to groups such as this, or working with lots of various groups around the state, it's the best way to get a hold of people. Having been here for a long time, having been to lots of networking events, and being really involved in the community, it's easy for me to pick up the phone if I'm trying to find somebody or find out something or how to get a hold of someone. I find it's pretty easy to do just through the network of folks that I've gotten to know, and through that I can reach out to people to kind of really impress upon them why it's important.
You had mentioned your own technical background. Obviously, expanding into more technical industries is something that Nevada's and many states are looking to do. We have Faraday down south, we have Tesla up north. What ideas do you have to try and harness whatever residual momentum there may be from those particular projects deciding to relocate here, and how do you plan on expanding upon that?
So the biggest issue we've got in terms of recruiting technical companies and frankly any large organizations to move to Nevada is our education system. And it's twofold. Number one, companies look at the state and they look at the workforce that exists here and say, hey, can I hire from the local workforce and will they be able to fill my company's needs? And then B, can I relocate my existing workers to this state, to this location, and will they go? Will there, and a big consideration for a lot of folks is, especially if they have kids, is will my kids get a good education once I relocate to that state? And so for me, it's really all about looking at what we do. We've been educating people, not just here in Nevada, but across the country in the same sort of a manner that we've been educating folks since really the Industrial Revolution, right? It's been a long time, and that was a time when over a decade or two, the jobs that existed in the workplace, they changed. Half the jobs didn't exist anymore, right? There were new types of technologies out. There were new types of skills that a worker would have to harness to be able to be valuable in terms of what wages can they demand when they go to work. And I really look at what we're doing today with technology and with the way that things are shifting. It's the same, right? The jobs that we've had for the last decade or two, or half of them won't be the jobs that we have in the next decade or two. And our education system needs to reflect that and change to be able to prepare us for it. I think that Nevada, being as small of a state as we are, we could lead the country in that effort. We're only 3 million people. Look at a state like California. I think they're 40 or 50 million people. How can they shift their school district? Their school districts? How can they really bring around major amounts of change? It's much more difficult than here. And so I think as a state, we need to really look at how can we do that. Specifically, I mentioned I'm a tech guy. I'm a programmer. I've been programming since I was in middle school. I ran my middle school's website when Google didn't exist and Yahoo and Dogpile was a thing, right? And I started programming. I learned on my own. By the time I was 16, I was programming. I was making money doing that. I think that we should have programs for kids from 16 to 18, even maybe younger if they want, to either be advanced by the time they get into college, right? They can be ahead of the curve, right? Or go right into the workforce if they choose to. Our colleges around the country like to teach kids programming languages that are 15 and 20 years old. When I found that when I went to college for computer science, I switched to business because I thought it wasn't worth my time to learn a programming language that was older than me, to learn a programming language that was modern that I already knew because my professor said so, right? It's our whole education system and we need to shift it. In Nevada, being such a small state, we can do that. We've got some great programs that are small, that are here now, that we need to expand on to make that a reality. And if we have the workers, if we have the education system that can produce the workers that can fill these high-skilled, high-demand jobs, they'll come. That's what it is. Programmers, for example, as a programmer, if I go out and apply for a job, for every one programmer that's out there, there's 5 job openings. It's huge.
From a more technical standpoint, since you have a great deal of programming knowledge, and you said you had referenced some work you did up at the legislature last session, what ideas do you have to make the legislature just more accessible or more transparent for average individuals who want to stay current on certain bills or want to follow certain bills as they progress through committees? What ideas do you have, or would you bring to Carson in order to make that happen?
Sure. So number one, on every piece of literature that I've got, whether it's mail or flyers or postcards or Post-its left on people's doors, there's my cell phone. That's my cell phone number. That's not a Google Voice number that is going to disappear one day. That's my phone number. It's on my business license. If you pull it from the county, if you pull it from the county, that is my phone number, right? So to me, accessibility is very important, right? I respond to text messages. I respond to emails. Maybe I'm a little slow sometimes on responding, but I respond. And I think that's an important part. Each individual assembly person that we have has approximately 65,000 people that they represent to the state of Nevada. It's relatively small. So that's a factor that makes it easier to be accessible. In terms of transparency and all of that, if you look around the country, if you want to find out what's going on federally, it's really easy. There's apps, there's websites that track all of that. It's all out there. It's really easy to do. But if you look at our county commission, if you look at our state legislature, the information's there. You can read meeting minutes, you can watch video, you can do all of this stuff. but to find what you want, to find the meat of things is very difficult. I got involved in politics starting back in 2010 because I responded to a bid for doing internet for the hospital system here in Clark County, and I didn't understand the process. I didn't know what was going on, and by the time I finished the process, I thought we had a good shot at winning a bid that we didn't win. And so I wanted to understand it. So I went out and I said, okay, well, what is the county commission? How does it work? Who's on it? You know, what's the process? You can go and watch 6 years of meetings and all the videos that go along with that. It could take you 6 years probably to do it. You can read all the meeting minutes, it's out there, but that's practically useless, you know. So being a programmer, I went out and I wrote some software that took 6 years worth of meeting minutes, digested them down into a few charts and graphs, and I found a lot of very interesting things very quickly. For example, almost everything that goes in front of the county commission is voted yes on. Almost nothing is no. Almost nothing is abstained, right? At the time, one of our county commissioners missed 23% of our meetings, right? He's making $100,000 and something thousand, $120,000 a year, but he can't bother to show up for almost 1 in 4 meetings, right? So being a software guy, I went out and did that in a few hours on my own time just to learn what was going on, and that's what got me involved. And we need to be able to make it easy for folks to do that. If you're a lobbyist, if you're in an industry, if there's a particular bill that you want to track, there's a system you can sign up for. It'll email you alerts when things are going on, but that's not really good enough. You know, we should have some very nice, easy to read data. And there's private industry out there that's willing to provide data too. I've met and spoken with some of our healthcare providers. Look at our doctors, right? We're missing services. If you want to go to a doctor, right, you're going to wait maybe 3 weeks, 2 weeks, maybe 6 months to go see the doctor that you need to go see. And there's data out there from our health insurance providers and from hospital groups that they're willing to provide us as a state to say, hey, here's what services are needed when and where. That's where we should be concentrating on. How do we fill those positions? How do we make sure that that training is being completed at our colleges, those residency programs are available. Should all be available. A lot of data out there, right? But I think that we should, demand that stuff's available, absolutely.
You've seen, why has Carson been so reluctant to embrace that?
I don't know if reluctance the right word. I think that as a state, we don't do technology right, period. Our tax department and our Secretary of State's office can't talk to each other through a computer, right? If I go register my business with the Secretary of State, they end up sending paper forms over to the tax department to enter things, right? So that's a huge problem. That's a huge issue. Technology is not something that we've done well, in my opinion, as a state. I don't think we buy technology well. I don't think we integrate our systems well. Having had experience with a Fortune 50 company and traveling the country, working with very large, old, data systems, I understand that it's very slow. It's hard to move things like that when people are in there and there's thousands of people who depend on systems, but it can be done, and it needs to be done, right? It can be done cost effectively. I help save millions, if not tens of millions of dollars for very large organizations through technology integrations, and I think that as a state we need to demand that we're the best. The best doesn't necessarily mean the most expensive, so.
I'm sorry, I had a series of follow-up questions. I was just curious to see Nick's ideas. Does anyone else want to jump in? Mindful that we had already interviewed him previously, and I didn't want to repeat things over and over. Kevin?
I'm good, thank you.
You're good? Mike?
I'm good, he's good.
Okay. Nick? Well, it's a lot more streamlined when it's only one person
Yeah,
up
nice
there.
and easy.
So, why don't you give us a minute or two? Why are you the better candidate for Assembly District 41?
Great. So,
I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I'm not. Give us a quick geographic area. Where is District 41?
Got it.
Then why you're the better candidate.
great. So our district runs from about Warm Springs, running south on the 15, covers both sides of the freeway. It cuts kind of to the east a little bit up through Seven Hills, and it goes west on the north side of the district all the way out to about Jones, and on the south side of the district, it's just to the west of the 15, going out to about Spencer, where Cashman Equipment is at St. Rose, including Seven Hills and all that area. Yeah. In terms of why am I the better candidate, my opinion is I'm the better candidate because of the breadth of experience that I've got. I've got a vested interest in what happens in our community. I'm a small business owner. When I'm up there and I'm voting on laws that are going to affect business, I'm going to be affecting myself. I have kids who are going to have to go to the schools here in Nevada, and they're younger now, they're 3 and 1, but they'll be in our school system, not too long. And so any vote that I take on education, it's going to impact my children, right? I've done consulting work for all types of businesses, you name it. I mean, from entertainment to financial services to construction companies. I've really had a lot of fortune to be able to look around and really see lots of types of companies. I've been through, a huge downturn, here in our economy, and my opponent, had as well, but I worked with a lot of companies that at the time were shrinking from, 1,000, 1,200 person companies down to 300 and 400 person companies, and I understand, why they survived. Having been involved in politics, I've spent a lot of time traveling the entire state. I'm running to represent Assembly District 41, but every vote that every one of our assembly members and senators takes will impact the entire state. That goes from Dyer, Nevada, where there's about 50 people, through Las Vegas and Carson City and Boulder City, and you name it, every part of the state can be impacted by the votes that we take. And I've had the opportunity to get to know folks all across the state, whether they're miners up in Elko or whether they're retired folks down here in my district. And I think that it's very important to be able to have those relationships and be able to reach out to folks and say, hey, how will this impact you? Is this going to be good for your community? Is this going to help you? And I think that's a very important thing that my opponent, hasn't had the experience or the time in the community out there. Besides that, I'm an extremely hard worker. I'll work with anybody. I don't care if we disagree on some topics or most topics. It really doesn't matter to me. If we can find common ground and we can work together, then that's what I want to do and make sure that what we're working on is the best that we can possibly have. I have a different background. Our school system is very one-tracked, right? If you test well, if you can be in that system, good for you. That's great. If you're not, you kind of get left behind, whether that's English is a second language issue, whether that's, you just don't like testing, whether you're bored, whatever it is. I think that we need to embrace those different paths. I took a different path. I lived on my own as a 16-year-old kid, paid my own rent, had a business, went to school. I went to college for a little bit, didn't like it, dropped out, went back later and finished my degree at night. But we, as a community, have a lot of folks that have different paths, right? There's a lot of night schools here because people have to work, and I think that we need to understand that, whether that means, if they're in high school and they want to go get some work experience because they just want to find out if they're going to like that career that they're going to go spend 4 years and spend $100,000 or $200,000, learning about, or if they just don't want to go to college at all and they want that work experience. I think that we can work with private industry to make that happen, and I'm the networking kind of guy to go out and build those bridges for the state, for our community. So
Perfect. Well, Nick, we appreciate you coming down and speaking with us
thank you
again.
so much.
We'll be releasing our endorsements by Friday night. You are our last interview of the general election, so God bless you for that.